Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. We've looked at a lot of crossovers between DC and Marvel over the years, mostly from the 90s onward. Today, however, we look at one of the earlier ones, I think maybe the fourth one they ever did. After Supes had a couple adventures with Spider-Man, after Batman tussled with the Incredible Hulk, a group of mostly sidekicks crossed paths with the strangest heroes of all. I'm taking issue with Marvel and DC present the Uncanny X-Men and the new Teen Titans. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. The cover is a wraparound, featuring the two teams kind of mixed together in a line, with Professor X in a completely different floating chair, and flanked by the Dark Phoenix and Darkseid. Though, since the evil Firebird is on the front, and therefore what most buyers would see first, I imagine this would have been particularly curious to X-Men readers, as this takes place after the Dark Phoenix saga. Probably less expected, since this was a while before readers would become numb to characters dying and coming back every 3 months. The credits page is more of an advertisement for one of the publishers, with the words, "Marvel Comics is power," looking like they were carved from stone, with a teensy Kitty Pryde adding, "And we're cute, too!" Marvel Comics, no uggos allowed. Written by Chris Claremont, with art by Walter Simonson, Terry Austin, and Glynis Wein, we begin at the Source Wall, littered with the long-dead Promethean giants who tried to get through, and paid the ultimate price. Metron of New Genesis figures he'll try his hand, because he's seen it all, learned it all, but what's on the other side of the source is allegedly the last mystery, and answering it will give his life meaning. He's been pretty depressed ever since little Susie Hamilton beat his high score at Galaga. Darkseid, who's colored green for some reason, warns him that maybe some things aren't meant to be known even by gods, but Metron is still going through with it. He's given Darkseid a device called the Psychon Wave in exchange for the Omega Phase helmet, constructed by Apocalyptian scientists to make it through the Source Wall. In theory, they never worked up the nerve to actually test it. And all the lab monkeys unionized, so they were a no-go. Thus, Metron flies into the bright mass of energy, and moments later his chair floats back, completely empty. Really should have worn his seatbelt. But hey, he got what he wanted, and so did Darkseid. The chance to fulfill his dream of conquering the stars, as he laughs maniacally and clenches his now blue fist. Maybe his clothes work like mood rings or something. We go to the Danger Room, where Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and Colossus are training until they get it right, according to Xavier. With an assist from the Fuzzy Elf, Logan takes out a flame gun, I guess with the brunt of his body, since it's after this that narration mentions he extends his claws to take out some missiles, as well as noting that he doesn't much like them. Unbreakable spikes that can't be removed and constantly pierce his flesh? What's not to like? Kurt evades the missiles with his trademark teleportation, causing them to take out their own launcher, while Piotr simply stands still, taking the brunt of the projectiles that targeted him. The missiles don't even scratch his skin. Someone gave him Armor All for his birthday as a gag gift, but I'll be dipped if it's not effective. After this near-flawless performance, Kitty shows up to announce that dinner is ready, and we get one exterior shot of the mansion as narration explains how she was worried her friends wouldn't like the meal she worked so hard on, but they did. So, yeah. Xavier works himself to exhaustion, sleeping at his desk, when Darkseid appears using a device wrapped around his glove, drawing out Charles's memories of Jean Grey, then doing the same to the other slumbering X-Men. Kitty is the last, but wakes up, screams at the sight of the despot's face in the dark, and phases into the sitting room on the lower floor. As the team arrives and tries to comfort her, there's a knock at the front door, and Scott goes to answer it, finding Jean standing there in her Phoenix suit. She falls towards him, asking for help, before fading away, leaving Scott to shout her name. And look like this. I guess that has always been his catchphrase. Elsewhere in New York is Titan's Tower, because this is an Earth where both publishing universes coexist. Raven dreams her soul self is flying through space, at peace, until it's assailed by the all-consuming light of the Phoenix Force. This awakens the empath, screaming, and she's checked on by Starfire, who takes her into the kitchen for some relaxing tea. Raven describes seeing the Earth changed into a wasteland, people stripped of humanity, and fears this dream may come true since her abilities include occasional glimpses into the future. Most prominently, there was a goddess-like woman within a bird of fire, which Garfield Logan, at this time called Changeling, walks in, and upon hearing this, decides to morph into such a bird, to show Starfire what it might have looked like. Seems like kind of a stretch of his powers, since I thought imagined animals were outside his scope, but he manages enough of a likeness that the alien warrior princess attacks at the sight of him. She had the same reaction to Big Bird when she was introduced to Sesame Street. She snaps out of it quickly enough, then apologizes for her warrior rage, which could have been rather fatal for Garfield. She then fires a starbolt at a console, I guess very gently somehow, to activate a Titan's red alert. Kid Flash responds, after dismantling the engine of two crooks evading police, followed by Donna Troy and then Cyborg, the latter of whom was doing the mechanical equivalent of web-swinging and had earlier passed a skyscraper the X-Men allegedly destroyed. If they're outlaws like the media suggests, he wonders why the Titans have never faced them. Did you set your clocks for daylight savings? That might explain it. Robin, however, has not shown up, as he's in Gotham responding to a burglary that he thinks is the return of Intergang. After tossing the last of several formidable opponents out a window, he unmasks to find a face that's not exactly human, much to his shock. "It's called a parademon, Bunky, and it works for me." And we see that Deathstroke the Terminator has arrived. As a fan of the Teen Titans animated series, it is weird reading his character say Bunky. It just would not sound right in Ron Perlman's voice. Unless he were doing Hellboy. I could see that working. His encounter with a Teen Wonder ends with his boot to his face, leaving him unconscious, which is why he didn't respond to the red alert. But not without bragging about using 90% of his brain, because of that misconception that most people only use 10%, and this was to make him sound all impressive. We go to the suburban home of Jean's parents, who also saw a vision of their daughter asking for help before she vanished, and aren't sure if she's dead or alive. A wound ripped open again after so much grieving.
I'm supposed to be opening the wound so that it can heal.
Cyclops witnessed his true love's demise firsthand, but confused the parents even more by saying that Jean had tapped into a primal, universal force, and he doesn't know if such a being could truly die.
Thanks, boys. You've been of absolutely no help.
Kinda weird that he claims he and the Greys heard a warning when Jean was actually asking for help. Call me pedantic, but I don't think that's really the same thing. Unless she said, "help me or else," though that could be more of a threat. But hey, a threat can be a warning too, right? Xavier psychically projects himself into the room to relay that Cerebro has found no trace of Jean, but has discovered something else. "Crazy Lenny's Discount Furniture Store is having a blowout sale. Apparently everything must go, and prices are so low, they're crazy." Mysterious incidents have occurred at places where Jean manifested the powers of the Phoenix, Kennedy Airport, the North Atlantic, and a few others. No indication what incidents happened, only that they were mysterious. However, they may be able to anticipate the next event and confront those behind it. Wolvie thinks his astral form is looking a little ragged, but the prof assures him he's fine. "No one takes Chucky's pep pills!" The Titans find Robin in an alley, which is weird because when Deathstroke attacked, it seemed they were near the street, and their fight wasn't exactly long enough to take either of them very far. Raven uses her empathic powers to heal him, and Changeling contributes by scaring off some rats. That seems totally necessary. Anyway, Starfire joins them after failing to find any sign of the Evil One in the city. She explains that while en route to be a slave, Empress Lilandra of the Shi'ar sent a message to all spacefaring races how an Earthwoman had become host to the Phoenix, saved the universe, then went bonkers with power. Star apparently witnessed Phoenix consume a star, thereby wiping out billions in its system, and then annihilate a Shi'ar battlecruiser. Wow, her trip with the Gordanians really took a while, didn't it? Eventually, Phoenix was reported killed, but with Raven's dream, Corey has her doubts and is eager to end the Chaosbringer for good, and is so riled up, her emotions cause Raven pain. Changeling points out how Deathstroke almost killed him, were it not for Wonder Girl and some Amazons, which feels like an odd thing to mention when there could be a star-eating bird on the loose. Even the Tamaranian mentions how he's alive and the people of the Dabari system are not. This doesn't seem important to add since it doesn't get mentioned for the rest of the story. It almost makes Garfield seem a little petty and selfish. Almost. Robin says they'll track the Phoenix, but if they don't find her, they're going to go after the Terminator. And this time, we make sure it's Slade Wilson. Arnold Schwarzenegger is still mad that we blew up his beach house. Starfire agrees, sealing the deal with a kiss, which of course Gar needs to complain about. Also, there was mention of contacting the Avengers or the Justice League, but I guess they all decided this was too urgent to not address immediately. Someone codenamed Phoenix was once associated with the X-Men, so they start there, as we go to another location where parademon workers perform their duties without question in a labyrinthian tunnel network, as Slade chills in a deck chair sipping champagne, until his glass is broken by someone's whip. He responds to the alien attacker with some throwing stars, busting the whip, and maybe sticking this green guy to a wall. Or missing him? I'm not sure. That was my last bottle of Dom Perignon 71. It's irreplaceable. Then why'd you leave it lying on the ground like that? If it was empty, and you lost the last glass full, it seems like you had most of it anyway. You'd think that'd be something, but hey, I don't drink, so what do I know? This is Ravok the Ravager, who merely wanted to test the human, and Slade's ready to run him through for it, when Darkseid appears. Despite his underling's distaste of Earthers, the big bad has use for both of them, but this is as finite as his patience, so neither should push their luck. While the assassin goes to the final siphon point, Ravok is tasked with retrieving the X-Men, alive and undamaged. At the X-Mansion, Xavier has strained himself again and dozed off, but remains on guard. On guard in his sleep? How is he any less vulnerable than before? Do telepaths have a special mental switch that Chuck forgot to flip before Darkseid paid a visit? He senses Starfire's arrival just before she crashes through the wall, talking about killing the evil one, and he knocks her out with a psi blast. He doesn't recognize her, though admits mistaking her for Jean at first glance, then refers to her as just a child. I can understand if this is more of an older guy, of a different generation, meaning to say she's just very youthful. In my 20s, I was once called a kid by a manager at my old job when we had an argument, so maybe that's the kind of context here. But there's nothing about Starfire's appearance I would call childlike. In his already weakened state, he's hit with a double whammy of Cyborg's white sound generator and Raven's soul self. Despite resisting them both, he's soon overwhelmed and passes out. Kid Flash has confirmed that the mansion is otherwise empty, and Starfire awakens in time for Robin's lecture about the crimes they've committed so far. Breaking and entering, trespass, assault, maybe attempted murder, and vandalism. If you didn't want Changeling spray painting Wolverine as a butt in the foyer, you really should have said something before you left Gotham. He goes on that they don't have special status as Titans and have to play by the rules like everyone else. To help reinforce that Star hasn't been on Earth long, he explains that she can't behave as she did just now, blindly busting in and attacking people, as suspects are presumed innocent until proven guilty. As strange as these rules may be, she has to honor them to stay part of the team. Considering he and Batman break into places and knock crooks around on the regular, at least 2/5 of his overall argument feels a tad hypocritical. Raven wonders if they made a mistake, as she senses deep sadness, but no evil in Xavier.
A lot of questionable and morally dubious decisions revealed after the year 2000, but no evil.
Starfire objects. They're in the X-Men's base, and Phoenix was an X-Man. But before Rob can lecture again, a boom tube opens, with parademon shock troopers pouring out and going on the attack. Presuming the Titans to be the X-Men, they mistake Cyborg for Colossus and, assuming Kid Flash is a new recruit, since they have no info on a speedster. And for someone with super speed, he's dispatched super quickly by one of the goons turning a dial to increase his battle suit's efficiency, so now Wally appears to be moving in slow motion.
Not scientifically possible!
Robin and Wonder Girl are ambushed, Star gets an energy disperser helmet slapped on her noggin, and Raven is tasered before she can use her soul self. With that, the Titans have been quickly and easily defeated, and carried through the boom tube, all except Garfield Logan, who was somehow missed during the fight, and figures that these groups may be far enough from being human that he can change into one of them. and he succeeds, passing as one of the parademons and following them to hopefully free the others. I did a little research, and early New Teen Titans stories had him changed into non-Earth creatures, including a Gordanian, one of the aliens that had abducted Starfire. Narration mentions murderous strain to pull off this form here, so while a bit glib, there does seem to be both precedence and effort from the writer to avoid making it seem too convenient. On a butte in New Mexico, Deathstroke is directing parademons in the operation of the last and biggest siphon module, nice little telepathy pun there, to absorb any of Phoenix's residual psychic energy. This also is mentioned in narration as where Scott and Jean consummated their love. It was that good, huh? Anyway, Slade doesn't much care what the big man wants with so much raw power, so long as he remembers the assassin favorably. And in what's actually a really great moment, a cigar pops in from off-panel with Wolverine asking for a light. Impressed that someone got so close to him without his detection, Wilson goes on the attack, but surprisingly misses, leaving himself open for a solid but claw-free hit from Logan. And how much more fun would this scene have been if the Knucklehead had caught that stogie afterward? Cyclops takes out a few demons, noting how after missing a previous attack in Chicago, this was their next likely target, showing the X-Men had picked up on their pattern. As Colossus starts wrecking the structure, and the others take out the Space Goons in their own unique fashion, Slade, who's still conscious because of his reflexes, and Wolvie not bothering to make sure he was down for the count,
No, that's dumb.
Not satisfying.
admits these mutants live up to their rep, and hits Storm with a Fear Ray, which takes the target's fear to its ultimate extent. Somewhere, Dr. Jonathan Crane's head just perked up, and without knowing why, he's becoming as anxious as a dog that just heard the rustle of a 20-pound Alpo bag. Stricken with claustrophobia, Ororo plummets into the arms of the waiting parademons. Kitty, Wolvie, and Kurt are felled by gas, while Psyche is hit by a bolt from an energy disperser rifle, which I assume came in a value pack with Starfire's energy disperser helmet, and Colossus has his own momentum used against him by Slade, who sends him tumbling down the butte, which knocks him out. Since they're already behind schedule, Deathstroke opts not to try rebuilding the siphon, and the boss will have to settle for the energy he has now. The X-Men as prisoners should help soften the blow. We go to the wall, which has stood where the physical universe merges with imagination and spirit, since the dawn of creation. Fortunately, it has rent control and is surprisingly affordable. With the barrier breached, I guess from Metron's little trip, energy from the source is spilling out, random and unfocused, awaiting someone to put it to use. Clearly, this ethereal cosmic force is in need of a good motivational seminar held in the Ramada Inn conference room. Ravok has arrived with who he thinks are the X-Men, but his Dreadlord tells him he's only got their mentor.
If this is your idea of a joke, Ravok, I am not amused.
We are not amused.
Slade arrives with the actual mutants, clarifying that the Minion captured the Teen Titans. Then he breaks the bad news that the New Mexico mission went south. While that location had particularly intense energy residue, Darkseid doesn't consider it a critical loss. He is curious, however, why one of his parademons is emerald green. Hey, you were green on page 2 and I didn't hear you complaining then, Chuckles. Changeling is subsequently found out and captured, and Darkseid blames Ravok's inexcusable stupidity for letting him get this far.
Master, it is not my fault. The Earthling!
Of course. Your kind must ever blame your own incompetence on others.
That is how Ravok got his own show on Twitter, after all. The Despot unleashes his Omega effect, what we would know today as the Omega Beam, which I guess takes the scenic route, passing by the underling before finally striking him. Darkseid trusts that this demonstration isn't lost on Deathstroke, and it isn't, as Ravok the Ravager is destroyed. On the plus side, the name Ravager is available, and I have a teenage daughter in need of a sinister code name. Eventually, the teams awaken, Titans in chambers at the base of a larger device, with X-Men fastened to the fan-like apparatus above them, made of a special material with no spaces between the atoms, so Kitty can't phase through. She recognizes Darkseid from her nightmare, and he pontificates how adults deny his existence, but children know him for what he is, which makes them dangerous and worth cherishing. Their innocence holds the universe's salvation, but the loss of it, will be his ultimate victory.
You're Satan, aren't you?
You win another round, Siskel, but we shall meet again.
Folks, I'm beginning to think this Darkseid guy might not be a very good person. Just a guess. Honestly, this reads more like he's a fairy tale villain that jumped out of a storybook rather than the stoic evil ruler of an entire planet. He orders his minions to activate the Psychon wave, and it begins absorbing the X-Men's memories of Jean Grey. After using their earlier stolen thoughts to pinpoint locations on Earth where she had used her Phoenix powers, and absorbing as much residual energy as possible at those locations, it's all amplified by the Psychon wave to near infinity, and combines them with the untamed energies escaping the source wall, until finally it coalesces into a familiar form, asking who has dared summon the Dark Phoenix.
I, Darkseid, and I need help moving a couch up a flight of stairs.
This is actually our first formal sight of him in this book, not obscured in shadow or the like, and up to now he's only been referred to as Big Man or Dread Lord. I suppose this was meant to be a moment of suspense for anyone that never read about the character, though even the darkened panels seemed pretty detailed. It's not bad, though maybe just not as dramatic a reveal for DC readers. Seeing his old girlfriend hold hands with one of the superest of supervillains is naturally disheartening for Scott, but Changeling, not really reading the space room, snarkily asks what this is all about. Rockface obliges, explaining his intentions to gain an advantage against his enemies on New Genesis by turning Earth into a second apocalypse, via pits of molten magma erupting on every continent. This will end civilization overnight, and even the potential for life will cease, and any strong enough to survive all this will become his servitor class.
You will attend to every whim of the upper class, endure painstaking labor, and have little to no rest. But you get a pizza party every third Wednesday of the month.
With this new apocalypse, Darkseid will expand his empire, starting with New Genesis, then to all realms of reality and even those of imagination. Hey, terrible writers have a new excuse. Just say Darkseid conquered the realm of imagination, and that's why your story stunk. He opens a boom tube and takes Dark Phoenix and his minions with him, telling the heroes they shall not meet again. We can still put you on our resumes as a reference, right? With his departure, both teams are freed from their restraints, and Cyborg mentions that, as bad as things were for them, it was probably worse for the muties, which feels like a prejudiced thing for him to say, doesn't it?
Is that racist?
Yes. A little bit.
No.
Raven, however, is a nervous wreck, having felt no empathic resonance from Darkseid. Keeping himself under such absolute control to keep a single particle from escaping, his soul naught but an emotional void that almost pulled her in.
It was only slightly worse than when I walked past that Warner Brothers studio executive.
In a nice establishing shot, Cyclops and Robin share the same idea to join forces, shaking hands as the heroes greet each other warmly. For the most part. Aside from Kitty thinking Changeling is cute, and probably about her age, Wolverine wonders why he seems to spook Raven. But that's only because the empath can sense he has a capacity for violence that exceeds Starfire's, and she has to be careful not to be affected by his fury.
Urge to kill rising.
Logan doesn't much like the idea of working with kids, which is weird since he's had 3 protégés that have all been teenage girls, and both he and Cyborg notice the air getting thinner, with maybe a half hour of atmosphere remaining. Just like Darkseid to leave and not pay this month's oxygen bill. Don't get any ideas from that joke, landlords. Cy also detects a kind of mechanism nearby, which is also picked up telepathically by Xavier. So with Starfire and Cyclops propelling the asteroid, they make way for the artifact, revealed to be Metron's Mobius chair. One go-go gadget arm later, it's pulled in, but heck if the prof can figure out the alien science on which it operates. Never fear, because as Garfield and Kitty are lounging on it, chatting, and she wishes she were home, they vanish, only to reappear an instant later, revealing the chair is thought-controlled. As hilarious as it might be to see them all try and fit in there, Kitty has an idea, whispering to Changeling, and moments later he turns into an enormous dragon, Lockheed. While most may be familiar with the smaller purple creature, Miss Pride originally used the name in a fairy tale she told Colossus' sister, Ilyana, where the X-Men played fantasy characters, and the dragon was inspired by their Blackbird jet. which is why it's also named after Lockheed Martin, who designed the real-life Blackbird jets. I guess Piotr had some hand in Lockheed's creation. He's an artist, so maybe he drew a sketch or something, because he feels the character is more special to just him and Kitty, and is surprised how upset he is that she seems attracted to the shapeshifter. He utters something in Russian about being foolish, giving Starfire an excuse to make things awkward by planting her lips on him, because she learns new languages by kissing, which gives Nightcrawler an idea.
Fraulein, sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Sorry, Kurt. Werner Herzog already beat you to it. Everyone hops aboard the Dragongar, who clutches the Mobius chair, helmed by Xavier, and they transport away, Cyclops vowing to make Darkseid pay for what he's done, whether this conjured Phoenix is really Jean or some replication. They arrive in New York City on a splash page, and yeah, considering this version of Lockheed is literally an in-universe fantasy creation, it does feel like it should be beyond Garfield's abilities. But maybe there's some other precedents I'm unaware of. Moving on, since Dark Phoenix thinks Professor X is dead, she isn't shielding her mind, so he follows her psychic trail, leading the teams to Central Park during an annual New York Philharmonic concert held each summer, when Raven senses Darkseid underground. She doesn't think they should attack with, according to narration, 500,000 innocents around. Well, he thinks they don't have the luxury of choosing between good and evil, only the lesser of two evils. And if saving the universe means the heroes sacrifice themselves and take some music lovers with them, then that's what they have to do. As pragmatic as they try to frame it, he could easily influence those people to go home. You're treading unpleasantly close to the Xavier's always been a jerk trope I have never cared for. They warp to an underground cavern with no enemies nearby, and form a strategy. Take out the Hell Pit machine, and buy enough time to summon all the supers on Earth to take on Darkseid and Phoenix together. Aurora, whose claustrophobia was actually under control until that fear ray hit her, is trembling, now more terrified than ever of this enclosed space. But she assures Cyclops she'll cope. While Changeling and Wolvie are off trying to sniff out the enemies, the Knucklehead takes a blast from the Terminator, making them even, as the parademons launch a surprise attack. It doesn't give them that much of an advantage, as our heroes handily fight them off, some like Starfire able to cut loose. However, they seem endless in number, so Psyche blasts them away to the lower levels, while Cyborg's sonic attack pushes the enemy back, and Storm fires a lightning bolt to create a wall of rubble, trapping the parademons but not killing them, so surmised by Slade, who managed to avoid their fate. I'd be trapped with them if my powers hadn't enabled me to dodge the boulders as they fell.
That's not fair! He's ignoring the laws of gravity!
Since they won't be able to dig themselves out in time to be of any use, Slade decides to warn the boss about the heroes. I hope this doesn't affect the company pizza party! The heroes follow the trail to its outlet, where several stories below is the villain's machine to create his fire pits, and an awkwardly placed parademon, just looking at the reader. Is he like a pop-up ad? Is he going to tell us about some product we can't live without, or someone's comedy special? Who are we kidding? He's going to talk about Raid Shadow Legends. In any event, they're noticed almost immediately.
Darkseid, my love, we have visitors.
I knew I should have killed your parents. I told you, they can't live with us. I will not give up my evil rumpus room.
Also, this machine has the villain's head carved right onto it. I know Batman personalizes this stuff, but this delves far deeper into egocentricity if you ask me. The heroes' return from the depths of space is surprising, indicating they may be more worthy than Darkseid thought. Slade arrives with his not-so-breaking news, and is tasked with handling the interlopers until his work is done, giving us another panel of him and Wolvie tussling. Starfire, meanwhile, is full of righteous vengeance, in the name of the millions Phoenix annihilated, but since her powers are solar-based, they only make the Firebird Lady stronger, as she clobbers the Tamarinian. Appealing to any humanity doesn't work, as Dark Phoenix doesn't consider herself Jean Grey, and Raven's soul self-attack doesn't fare well, since, she's half demon.
You are tainted by an evil that rivals my own. You cannot hold me, Raven. We are too much alike. We could almost be sisters. No! Not another birthday to memorize. I never know what card to get.
Darkseid says the time to strike is now, so Phoenix fires into the mechanism to initiate the Hell Pit. And to solidify the hero's worst fears, Rockface explains, along with some visual aids, how the Phoenix Bolt will hit the Earth's core in minutes, causing an irreversible transformation, with hell pits bursting forth across the globe, including New York. He even offers the heroes the chance to give up their futile efforts and prosper under him, while Kitty and Changeling use their powers to disrupt the machine's operations from inside, if only to necessitate shutdown for repairs.
Oh sure, smash the smart guy's machine.
Xavier has figured out that Darkseid didn't gather all of Jean's residual psychic energy, meaning this duplicate Phoenix is incomplete, creating a flaw that he and Raven can exploit. Unfortunately, Ray is having a bit of a moment, since that earlier attack hit a chord with her demon half, nearly turned her evil herself, and she feels so overwhelmed by how much has been asked of her that she's hesitant to attempt another strike. Then we shall die, Raven, the first of many. Those correspondence courses in motivational speaking are really paying off, aren't they, Charlie? Nevertheless, as Darkseid targets the youngest team members and Dark Phoenix prepares to dispense with the ex-Titans, as she calls them, Raven finds the fortitude to strike, encouraged by how she influenced the formation of the Teen Titans. With Xavier boosting her empathic abilities, she drains the cosmic death pigeon of all hatred, lust, and rage, and fills the emotional void with the X-Men's love of Jean Grey. The replica shrieks in agony as her physical form begins losing cohesion, returning to the depths of space, as the professor tells the others, at least Robin, that she was held together entirely by her insatiable desire for survival. Survival and, of course, Hostess fruit pies. With that belief shaken, she's dissipating, and Grayson has the idea to openly suggest she reabsorb the power she shot into the earth and save herself. I guess she's so desperate to exist, she's not considering this could be a trick, because she goes along with it, much to Darkseid's ire. Before he can do anything to stop her, Kid Flash and the team's muscle stop him in his tracks, and when he threatens them with the Omega effect to wipe them out, Starfire blasts his eyes with her star bolts. Coriander was an early pioneer in laser eye surgery. Obviously, there were some kinks to work out. And it's not exactly a quickly resolved inconvenience for him either. While he's strong enough to knock the heroes away, he's definitely hurt, while swearing that he's going to make them beg for death. Dark Bird on Flambe doesn't care as she retakes the energy, and through the mind link with her that he forged with Raven, Charles can see the Phoenix as she was meant to be, a goddess of life, and can sense the power which tempted Jean. But as mournful as this makes him, he does not relent his psionic attack. And maybe that's why this panel makes him look like he's just been kicked in his change purse.
Oh my god, my crotch, you've punched me in the crotch.
As the Hell Pit is sealed, off panel somehow, she's got that power back, even daring the ex-Titans to bring it on. But is probably rethinking that challenge since that bolt was not enough to keep her from fading away. She begs for help, to not die, so Darkseid, with his eyes still smoking, says she can stick around if she takes a physical host, and she's quick to find one. Scatter, people! Get away from me, now! I'm just sick of you all on a personal level, especially you, Changeling. Take a bath once in a while. Hey, why is Phoenix looking at me like that? Yep, she picks Cyclops to inhabit, then is flooded with memories and emotions that conflict with her chaotic power. As Jean Grey's love is what led her to sacrifice herself, denying it would be to deny the Phoenix's true self, as Summers reasons, and Dark Phoenix realizes it would have been better to have been left as cosmic energy than given this illusion of existence, so easily taken away, and so rips off Psyche's visor and looks directly at the one responsible for all this, Darkseid, who stands rather regally as this Crimson Firebird zeroes in on him. Seems in character for him, but then he was in searing pain not long ago, and I wonder if he even sees it coming. In a flash, they've vanished, leaving the heroes and wrecked machinery shooting up from beneath Central Park as the Philharmonic reaches the crescendo of the 1812 overture, amid the dazzling fireworks and the applauding crowd who think it's all part of the act. Now the orchestra has to think of something to top a giant fire chicken for next year's concert. Thanks a lot, Darkseid. First you try to destroy the world, now this. In the blink of an eye, the blazing entity travels an unimaginable distance, following an energy trail / lifeline, desperate to rejuvenate herself, while knowing it's too late, as she returns to the source. As the concert-goers head home, the teams have taken a breather at Belvedere Castle. Raven finds it ironic that the qualities she thought the Phoenix would use against her were what gave her the strength to triumph in their second clash. Nightcrawler pontificates on how their humanity is derived from the balance found between good and evil. Since Dark Phoenix was little more than a hollow shell of evil, merging with Scott made her realize she couldn't equate to what she once was, and thus that probably destroyed her. Oh, how I wish that's how it worked for all cheap imitations. Begone, foul blasphemy! Storm remains puzzled by something. If this Dark Phoenix they just defeated did not exist before Darkseid created her before their eyes, what or who was the Phoenix appearing before the X-Men and the Greys? We return to the wall for the epilogue, where the Mobius chair appears. I guess the heroes just plumb forgot about it underground, and its true owner takes his seat. The breach is sealed, balance restored, and everything's back to the way it was, with one exception, as Metron thanks his old friend for the answer to another mystery, and the comic ends with him bidding farewell to Darkseid, who is now a petrified part of the Source Wall. From ruthless despot of an entire planet, bane of the galaxy, to a cosmic big-mouth Billy Bass. That was Uncanny X-Men and New Teen Titans, and I think it was a really good story. This may put me in the minority, but I was never much of a fan of Claremont's writing. Not saying it's bad necessarily, but sometimes just very wordy, perhaps more than necessary. Yeah, I know, like I'm one to talk. But it seems like not everything needs intricate narration, especially if we're seeing it, or if it isn't terribly relevant to the larger story. Like Kitty's worry that the X-Men won't like the dinner she prepared, which they totally did off-panel, or Gar's angst towards Slade. Feels like some of that could have been trimmed or left out, but in fairness to the overall writing, it manages some really good humor that holds up, and there are plenty of times where the descriptions or dialogue are genuinely helpful to a scene and really complement the art, like when Darkseid's Omega Beams backfire on him. And he had his contacts in, so it was even more painful. Modern readers will probably get a very different vibe from these characters, kind of unavoidable since this was published in the early 80s. Wolverine is more rebellious than feral, Kitty is youthful and excitable. A lot of character growth has happened since this first released. Even if Cyborg doesn't automatically think the X-Men are bad, it may seem shocking that he would use a derogatory term like muties, since mutants started out as an allegory for racial discrimination, though today they can be interpreted beyond that.
We're the X-Men, dated metaphor for racism in the 60s.
Though I suppose one could argue this shows that anyone can be blinded to even small examples of prejudice. There's even a moment where Kid Flash asks Storm if Colossus is Russian, and she's all, yeah, and I'm African, what's so important about it? There's really good interpersonal stuff, establishing each team's dynamics and bonds, and while they do work together and mostly get along rather quickly, it's understandable given the universe is at stake. And even then, some get jealous, even Kitty getting mad over Star kissing Colossus when she was kinda crushing on Gar, or tension, like Cyclops insisting Cyborg use their names in the field, not off-the-cuff monikers. At least Cy called him One-Eye instead of Blinky the laser-shooting monkey. It does philosophize, like Nightcrawler talking about how they defeated their foe, and it actually works better than some other attempts I could name. It fits without feeling like it's trying to be smarter than it really is. The story nicely works for both universes, Darkseid's desire for conquest and Dark Phoenix's penchant for chaos and destruction. Working in Starfire as overhearing some galactic announcement or witnessing the devastation during her capture was a good way to at least spark the Titans' involvement, alongside Slade Wilson's employ. One can imagine that, being a native of Earth, Darkseid figured he was better suited to help loot places that might have the tech they needed, directing the parademons on the planet, rather than one of his own minions. However, not only does the story forget about him after he takes that optic blast, and those trapped parademons, this did make me want a more formal, focused fight between him and Wolverine. Preferably where Logan doesn't just assume someone is down for the count after one hit. There were some conveniences like that, perhaps for time and bending story logic a little. I also wonder how many of Changeling's morphing was because of Claremont not being overly familiar with his powers and limitations. But hey, I could be off base. It felt a little longer than it needed to be, and I really questioned stuff like Charles thinking there's nothing to be done about the crowd in Central Park. But the pieces of the plot came together really well, the conclusion was pretty satisfying, and it even had a bit of mystery about the apparition of Jean that could fit into the ongoing X-Men titles of the time. The artists managed to convey a lot of immense power and enormity with these cosmic forces and phenomena, with so much detail and sometimes just simplicity of appropriate color choices. Sure, an expression or two seemed odd, Darkseid looked like he was dressed for St. Patrick's Day for some reason at the beginning. One panel made Cyborg disappear in a yellow flash, and just before he died, Ravok looked out of place from the other character designs, like an ugly but still kinda cutesy villain from like the 80s Rainbow Break cartoon. And, something I didn't notice until editing this, Garfield loses his green complexion while everyone is basking in victory. But then you have the bigger moments of Phoenix Scott unleashing his power, the majesty of the wall, Phoenix's return, and Darkseid's ultimate fate. All without digital effects, it beautifully manages to sell a number of important moments. Perhaps there's a lot in this story that shows its age, and many of the characters have come a long way. But for all the stuff I didn't exactly care for in this book, like its length, it's still worth a read and holds up quite well. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.